Good morning. This is Inside the FLX from FingerLakes1.com. I'm Ted Baker, and my guest in studio today is Ryan Wallace. You might know him from Quick Solar. You might know him from the Lake Tunnel Solar Village, or soon you might know him as the guy who built your house. Ryan, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Ted. Thanks for having me.
So before we talk about this exciting grant and your expansion plans, just tell us a little bit about the Solar Home Factory, what you do and how you do it.
Well, thanks. It's been a journey the past few years, and we've been very fortunate to have a really great team behind us. And we started as a company that was originally called Small Grid. We were going to retrofit homes with solar and heat pump technology, and the problem that we kept running into is that the home itself was not a good envelope. It wasn't a good, it's tough to take a home built in 1800s Victorian area home and make it energy efficient. And so we started building small homes, and the Lake Tunnel Solar Village development was that, and we did all those homes out of a factory over on Forge Avenue. Factory's probably a little generous to call that building. It's a big pole barn, and it was tight when we were building 3 homes at a time in there. It was a tight working space, but we've been really fortunate to have our work get a lot of attention in kind of the housing circles and the affordable housing circles, and we're now rapidly expanding. We're moving into multifamily development, and so really that's our focus, is building solar villages, but that are rentals, and that allows us to really be efficient with our materials and our labor, because both of those things are much more expensive now than even just a few years ago.
You're getting a $2 million grant from the state. Was the expansion plan already in place, and this is helping that, or is this what made the expansion possible?
It really made it possible. It made it bigger, and it's making it happen faster. It's a $21 million expansion, so the public money part of it is a very important, catalyst, but it's we still have a lot of private money involved, and so one of the things that we always heard at Lake Tunnel was that it was somehow a state-funded development, and the truth of the matter is, it just like the factory, that state money kind of got things moving. We had to put $1 million into the ground down at Lake Tunnel to make that site viable as a development. And now there's $5 million of homes on the tax rolls. So, and all those homes are privately funded. So, I think it's a great example how you can take public money and smartly, really leverage it to a significant degree to do big developments and start bringing, bigger properties on the tax rolls.
So tell us about these homes. Volumetric modular is your process. They're built and can be trucked to anywhere.
Yeah, and our focus is not, unfortunately, is not single family homes anymore. So we're not putting these, if you called me up and said, hey, I've got a lot, I want to put a home on it. We're really getting away from that. And like I said, it's because material costs have gone up so much. And labor is harder to find, so we have to focus on denser developments. And frankly, it's the more responsible way of developing. I know not everyone likes apartment complexes, but if you take 5 acres and you put 100 apartments on that, that has actually been proven to be economically much more beneficial to a community than taking that 5 acres and doing 5 homes on it. And so what we're doing is volumetric modular just basically means that we're building the entire, living unit in the factory. So when they, just like we did at Lake Tunnel, but at a bigger scale. So when those units leave our factory, they've got, they're framed, They're incredibly insulated. Electrical plumbing's done. Flooring's in. Drywall's complete. They're painted. The trim's up. The appliances are already in. I've joked that we're going to put toilet paper on the holders. It's ready to go.
So you've had Lake Tunnel and you have a development on Carter Road. What have you learned from these that goes into these homes going forward?
That's a great question. A whole bunch of stuff, and not the least of which is that we can do a lot more to create a really great community environment if we design it to be rentals. And that is different than what the traditional mindset is. The traditional mindset is that rentals are generally, shabbier or somehow less appealing, and renting or owning a property is always going to be better. But in reality, that's not what the market wants anymore. People who are leaving a 3,000 square foot home on half an acre do not want anything more to maintain, even if it's a smaller, space. They want to be able to call up a maintenance company and say, hey, there's a leak under my sink, fix it. And then the younger generation is not as eager to take on the big homes and the big space. The number of households with 2 parents and children in the United States is the lowest it's ever been. It's 18% of households now. So that is, a big thing that we learned was that we had to focus on rental style developments, but changing the dynamic. So what I mean by that is, really designing the community to have lots of features and that are just included in the rent. So, all your utilities are included, your internet's included, the dog park's included, the community space is included, the fire pit. We've got EV charge stations, and eventually we're going to have EV checkouts. You just, a 2-car family could drop a car and just check out another car whenever they need it. That kind of stuff is I think, really exciting, and that's what we've learned from a development.
Let's talk about the appearance of these units. When the Lake Tunnel Village first went in, I looked and said, boy, they're kind of boxy looking. They look like storage containers. But now that it's been there for a while and people decorate and they hang plants and they put their patio chairs out, the more you look at it, the more it begins to look homey and what people are looking for.
Well, and the one thing that I didn't anticipate in that particular development is the way it's situated, the site. There's a very high traffic roadway that goes basically up above it. And if you took any development and you looked at it from an elevated platform, it looks a lot different than when you look at it from ground level, And so that's kind of one of the things that was different about Lake Tunnel was that, we were really under a microscope right there. And I would challenge anyone to drive into the development and we've heard that before, who think it looks boxy or industrial, and drive into the development. And when you're seeing it from ground level, where people actually live and they see how they live going in and out of the units, it's a beautiful space. But there's no denying that it's boxy. And the reason for that is we had to be able to ship those down the road, right? So what we've done, this is another learning item, is that we're no longer building 1-story modular structures. Now they're going to be 2 and 3 stories. And all of a sudden, that's not an issue. If you look at downtown Geneva, Seneca Falls, Waterloo, it's surrounded by 2 and 3, it's filled with 2 and 3-story buildings that have flat roofs. That's the entire commercial district, right? And so when you build up like that, all of a sudden, the architecture doesn't become an issue. And so, that was definitely a learning item for us because, I hate to hear people, I understand it, but I hate to hear people disparage, the look of it because in a way, it's, we never could have built those homes that tight, that efficiently. And they really are the nicest homes in Geneva. People kind of look at me when I say that, but the insides of those homes, the performance of the homes, the quality of the construction, they are the nicest homes probably in the area.
Well, you make a very good point that I hadn't really thought of myself, which is normally when you drive by a home, you're not looking down at the roof.
Yeah,
I mean, so
right.
it's a little bit, like you said, coming around that curve above the lake, you get a different look than you would if it were on the middle of a tree-lined street somewhere.
That's right. But rather than try to fight that, rather than try and do more developments of that same style, we're still trying to listen to that. And when we go into other municipalities, we're getting a project, going through approvals right now in the town of Milo for a 125 unit development overlooking Cuca Lake, and that development looks entirely different. And instead of being up and above when you're driving by, it's actually up on a hillside. So you're seeing this really beautiful 3-story structure with these walkout patios, and it's really, it's really a stunning difference. And so we've tried to respond to that just because, municipalities want to maintain a certain look. And so,
the way that people are living is changing. Like
Yep.
you said, people want to downsize. Younger people like walkable communities.
Yep.
Did you see that coming and we're ready to hit it, or did you get kind of lucky in a sense?
Well, I think we were fortunate in some sense. We knew that we didn't ever want to be doing. It was built into our DNA that we were doing infill. So in that sense, we've always been attracted to downtown areas, downtown spaces. I've spent a lot of time in Europe, and one of the things I really love about how Europe still is, like in places like Germany and France, is that they're like upstate New York 100 years ago, where everyone lived in the villages, and the farmland kind of branched out from there. There weren't thousands of people lining county roads. And the thing is, all those homes down county roads, they're inexpensive to build, right? You just clear the lot and connect to the utilities, on the county road, but they're incredibly hard from a municipal standpoint to maintain. Now you're plowing all these roads, you're maintaining all these roads for relatively few residents. Whereas when people used to live in the villages, even little small farming hamlets, you could have things like a bakery and a pub or a little grocery or something, because there was a concentration of people to support that, and then the resulting farmland was kept for agricultural use. And so I really think that is a wisdom that we're going to have to get back to, because the market doesn't want to live out on those far-reaching places. Everyone says they want peace and quiet, until they have to drive 20 minutes every day to the grocery store, or more.
Who is the clientele for these homes? Who has it been, and who do you see it being in the future? Is it largely younger people? How much of it is people who want to be socially conscious and do the right thing? How much of it is people who just say, free utilities? Yeah, sign me up.
It's our biggest demographic is downsizing retirees who just want no maintenance living. That is a overwhelming majority. And then the second group is younger people, a large number of which moving into the area from more densely populated metro areas. So and that was starting to happen, even pre-COVID, and has continued since COVID. A surprising number from the Philadelphia area, but New York City, Boston, coming out seeking kind of, it's funny because a lot of these people are coming from urban areas, will say, I just want to get out to the wide open spaces. And then they come out to the wide open spaces and they're like, this is fantastic, but I need to live in the city because I still need to walk to a pub, or I still need to walk to the grocery store. That's what they're used to. So I think in a lot of ways we're just kind of responding to that market. And even though the downsizing baby boomers are coming from these big homes, they're still wanting the same thing. They're still wanting, a relatively easy commute or walkability. So.
This $2 million state grant, was this something you applied for, or did you have some sort of idea that it might be coming?
It was. We applied for it through the CFA process, the Consolidated Finance Application process, and basically what we said is, we are still a relatively young organization. We have a great financial partner called Community Preservation Corporation, who finances our projects, our developments. But we as an organization are still a relatively small organization. We're 22 people, locally owned. And so we said in our application, we can gradually grow from that 22 people to 100 people over 10 years and bootstrap it like we've been doing. Or if we got, this $2 million in from Empire State Development and the Excelsior program, what we can do is we can afford to buy more framing tables. We can buy more industrial saws. We can buy more equipment that will speed up how much product we can get out of the factory, and therefore how many more projects we can do, and it speeds everything up. So we'll still get, traditional financing for the building and still a lot of the equipment, but it's really going to speed up the equipage of the factory.
So what's the process to hire and train 100 new people by next fall to winter?
That is a great question, and I'd be lying to say I know exactly the answer. We are working with Finger Lakes Community College, the BOCES program, and the IBEW and Northeast Carpenters. And our goal here is not to try to steal people from other entities, but what we're trying to do is locate, and we already have done this, locate a few very experienced tradespeople, and then we will support them with a whole bunch of new apprentices, many of which right out of high school. And that's a big passion of mine, is restoring the value of the trades in the eyes of these kids coming out of high school. I was a kid who went to a 4-year institution and had no business being there. I was just lucky that I got out without a whole bunch of debt. If someone had told me, hey, go into this apprenticeship program, 6 years, you'll be a journeyman, you'll be making, $42 an hour, full benefits, I would have said, sign me up. Because even if I was interested in something creative on the side, and that's what I'm teaching my boys, you always have that trade to fall back into. Now, there always still will have to be lawyers and doctors and engineers and people who have to go to a 4-year institution. But I was surrounded by kids at my college who were just winging it, no idea what they wanted to do. And that's part of the college process, but why not have a huge percentage of those kids that are already inclined towards, tactile work? Why not have them learning a trade and then going to FLCC for 2 years and exploring some liberal arts stuff? But at the same time, they got to have that trade, and we'll be pushing really aggressively at the high schools to get, at Geneva High School, at Penn Yan Academy, here in Seneca Falls, get kids who are not sure what they want to do, get them default into that. And then, hey, if they don't like it, the worst they did was made a great salary for 5 years, or a great wage for 5 years,
Your wife's involved in the company. I met your mom back in the Quick Solar days downtown. She gave a great sales pitch for one of those heat pump units. How important is it to have family involved in this with you?
Well, and it's been great. It's always challenging, working with your family, but it is great. But what we've had to do over the past few years is take that kind of family mindset and broaden it. So, Marita has become, my mother's become kind of the mother to the crew, and is really keeping up that atmosphere that we care about the crew, and she's always cooking for them, and when COVID hit, she was kind of the COVID police, making sure people are distancing, and not out of a feeling of love, wanting to keep these guys safe and gals safe, and we got through COVID really well. We kept up productivity, we got projects done. I mean, we finished Lake Tunnel in the middle of COVID. And then Tracy, my wife, is the CFO. She has just become this wizard in something that is very important in small business, which is cash flow management. You're constantly trying to make sure that everyone gets paid and the projects move forward, and doing all of that without a big bank account. And that every small business person who's listening knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's a tightrope walk, and it's challenging. And so I've been very fortunate that skill set is there. And then what we've done is, and I think really successfully, is we've brought in partners, Mark Rodriguez, David Patrick, Brandon Mitchell, Irene Rodriguez, all these people who have and I'm forgetting a whole bunch more. There's a whole bunch of key players now, but fantastic experience. But kind of that family atmosphere, broadening it and say, okay, this is the type of company we're going to be. And what that really means for us is that we're going to try and be something that is absolutely not new in our region. There used to be manufacturing companies that had that family mindset, where the CEO would vacation with the employees. There's a great picture in Uncle Joe's Pizzeria on Genesee Street of the old American Can family, all the employees down at the lakefront having like a day off vacation, and there's the CEO and there's the management team and there's all the crew, and it wasn't a photo op. You could tell they were just all relaxing, that they'd done this before. That's what small businesses used to be. I shouldn't say small businesses, that still is true, but manufacturing used to be. And it worked, and there was a reason it worked, because when management is not 1,000 miles away from the team, the company is more responsive. It's never going to be a mega corporation, but is that really a bad thing? And so I just hope that we can, replicate what used to be, because it works.
You just described the decline of the economy in my hometown. Very same. I grew up in northern New Hampshire, paper mill company. Yeah. When it was family owned, the family made plenty of money, but so did the workers, and they were together as members of the community. Then the company was sold to distant shareholders.
That's right.
And jobs get kicked overboard. For people who haven't heard the story, let's go back to the very beginning, when you discovered solar energy in New Mexico, which is not a bad place. If I recall, the license plate still has a sun on it, doesn't it?
That's right. The Z symbol. Yep. Yeah, so I got started in solar at my uncle's cabin. Craig Wallace, he and his wife Trudy, my aunt, built this fantastic off-grid cabin in Grants, New Mexico, and it overlooked this valley that is right at the border with Arizona. And so two things really stood out to me as a 15-year-old, at this cabin. One was how cool it was that we were, miles and miles and miles away from the nearest utilities, and yet we had power, we had heat, there was, you could just plug in a device and it worked, and here we are, there's no wires running to the building. I just thought that was the neatest thing. And then we would take these day hikes up to this ridge, and we'd look out over the ridge. It was this beautiful landscape, except for when the weather was cold in the morning, because the convection layer kept in all the pollution from the coal-fired power plant that was about 50 miles away. So here you are in one of the most sparsely populated areas of at least North America, or the United States, and there's smog. And it's because there's this massive coal plant, and it just blanketed this whole area with coal smoke. And so it was just two really poignant things, that you could build a home that didn't need outside utilities, and that and then that need for big outside utilities could just make this beautiful area just look like LA.
So then what led you to say, okay, I'm going to start a solar business in the coldest, cloudiest, unsunniest place in the world, or at least it seems that way sometimes.
It only seems that way. It's not. So, there's all this data, right? There's all this data from just decades and decades and decades of weather stations. And Miami, Florida averages 5 sun hours a day. And Geneva, New York averages 4.18.
Wow.
And that's because, now it doesn't feel that way in January and February at all. It's not. But it's because it's an annual average, right? So we've got these great long sunny days that start at 4 a.m. and end at like 10 p.m. in the summer. And so that's when we produce a huge chunk of our power. And so for us, as soon as I checked that, I saw that, solar could definitely work. That's when we started looking at the area. And the reason we brought our company here and the reason we continue to invest in this region is that, and I've lived literally all over the United States. I split my time growing up between New Mexico and Seattle. We've lived in Florida. We were just back there. My family was just back there for a week in Sarasota. And while it's beautiful, these are places that are in trouble. Sarasota is building like crazy, and yet they're building 1.5 feet above the water line. And even if people don't want to talk about climate change, if you talk to someone who owns a condo in one of those buildings, they're nervous because they've seen, it's not that they're seeing the water creep up every day, but what they're seeing is they're seeing high tides. You're seeing some places where they've actually had to sandbag by the buildings a little bit just because on a really high tide, it goes over a break wall that it never used to go over. And so, I looked at that and said, I don't want to invest my life and my children's lives in a place that's going to be susceptible to this. Not to mention, they're building $1 million condos like crazy, and I don't know who's going to buy these things in 30 years when the people who own them pass away. I don't see people in my generation, ponying up $1 million for this. It's just, one, they don't have the money, but two, I don't think there's a desire to live in some of these places. So I think that all this migration to the southeast, I actually think is going to slow and reverse. Or at least it's going to stop, and the people up here are going to stay, and there's going to be more people like we're seeing right now come out of the cities to places like the Finger Lakes. In the Southwest, where I'm from, they're drinking river water because the wells are going dry. And so what happens when Colorado shuts off that river water because they need it for their own citizens? Well, the city I grew up in, Albuquerque, is suddenly going to be not very viable. That's a scary thing. So to me, the Finger Lakes, even with the weather that we get in the winter, is such a safe bet. And while it doesn't necessarily feel that way, that right now, I'm telling you, over the next 20, 30 years, you're going to see a boom in the Northeast because all it's going to take is the first news story that, that you can't get water in some of these southern cities.
What do solar panels collect? Is it the direct light? Is it the UV? So in other words, if the sun, it's always there,
yeah.
But does it have to be out and shining for the panel to collect, or does it collect some energy even when it might be a little cloudy?
It does collect some energy when it's cloudy. In fact, it can be, as long as you can see 100 yards away, you're collecting some energy. So and that's what's really exciting is that when you build a structure really well from the get-go, you build it really insulated, and you use really high efficiency, like heat pump technology, to provide the heating and cooling, that overcast sky is enough energy to power that home. So you don't necessarily need that bright beaming sunlight, 10 hours out of the day. And so we've definitely seen that, and we have homes down at Lake Tunnel that are producing double what they're using. And that wasn't by design. We literally thought, okay, this is what it'll need, and the homes have even surprised us at just how little energy they need. And that's very possible. It's doable technology right now without spending a fortune.
Is there a breakthrough out there? If a solar panel is 10 by 10 feet today, are they going to be able to make them that are 6 inches by 6 inches someday?
So there is other technologies coming. and I'm going to get this wrong. It's a Perscovite. It's a different technology. Starts with the letter P. Someone else can Google it. There are other technologies that would radically shrink the panels, but I'm in no hurry for them, and the reason why is I've got more than enough rooftop to provide all the energy I need, and so all I care about is will the panel last. How much does it cost? And is it covering the needs based on how much space is taking on that roof? So when we build a 3-story multifamily building, there's enough roof space there to make that entire 32-unit building completely net zero. So it's going to produce as much energy as it uses over a year, and so I'm not really worried about efficiency gains for size. It'll be nice for cars. It'll be nice that you could literally have, a contoured roof of a car and it's sitting there in the parking lot recharging. But yeah, for structures, the technology is definitely, and the price point is definitely good enough.
Are the attitudes toward alternative energy beginning to change? There seems to be kind of a uniquely American resistance to it in so many ways. You talk about cars.
Yeah.
There's still, in a lot of people's minds, the popular perception that they don't go fast, they don't go far, they're not practical.
Yeah, and I think that's why you saw Tesla focus first on the fastest car they could make before they brought out their economy car. And it's why Ford is doing the F-150 first versus well, actually they did the Mustang crossover first, but that's one of their biggest mainstream vehicles. The F-150 is going to be electric. I think what changes that is when people start seeing practicality. We have people who have lived in our homes that were skeptics initially, and there's a disbelief factor in the first, the first phase is disbelief. Like, wait a minute, I really don't have a utility bill? And then after that, it's like, hey, this is kind of cool. And then like a year later, it's like they're an evangelist, right? They've moved from being totally skeptical to like, this is the best thing ever. I think you're going to see that in vehicles, right? You get someone who's always bought F-150s, who's a Ford guy. He's going to be really skeptical buying that first Lightning EV, and that's like, wait a minute, this has like double the power, and I can beat a Porsche 911 Cayenne off the line, and I can haul more, and like, wait a minute, even if I don't have solar, it's still cheaper to charge it than it is to buy gas. I think all of a sudden that guy's going to go from skeptical to loving it to being a total evangelist too. We believe that in our developments that we can provide the infrastructure for that car charging, because that's possibly if I was a skeptic about anything on EVs, my only concern is can the grid support it? And that is still a major concern.
Anything else we haven't covered this morning you'd like to get across?
No, I just, I think that it's worth just repeating again that, we're definitely looking for tradespeople, and we've got a lot of people to hire over the next 2 years. And that if you're someone with a child in high school, at any local high schools here, and they don't know what they want to do, really encourage them to take a look at the trades, especially in our organization. You're going to be working in an inside environment, climate controlled. One of the big things about, I think, encouraging young people in the trades is making sure you have enough of the seasoned guys and gals to not only impart wisdom and skill, but also keep the apprentices safe. I mean, that's a big part, obviously, of construction is safety. And so I think that just know that, I mean, if you've got kids of that age, or if you happen to be that age and you're watching, there's really a place for you in the trades. And that's plumbing, electrical, HVAC, carpentry, roofing, solar, heat pumps. I mean, there's a whole bunch of specialties that we'll be doing in the factory, and all of them require different skill sets, and it can be a tremendously satisfying career.
SolarHomeFactory.com is the website. 100 new jobs coming, 2022-23. Ryan Wallace has been our guest. Thanks for being here, and I think it should be said as well, thanks for doing this here in the Finger Lakes.
Oh, absolutely. And people like yourself and organizations like Finger Lakes One, and getting the word out of these things is tremendously helpful. We really love this community. We really love the Finger Lakes. We wouldn't be doing it anywhere else.
This has been Inside the FLX from FingerLakes1.com. I'm Ted Baker. Thanks to Ryan Wallace, and I'll talk to you tomorrow morning with Josh on the debrief here on FingerLakes1.com. Have a great day.